Hello, everyone. Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm being redundant about saying hello because it's the mark of what is going to happen today in this roundtable. Because we have people from all over the world. It's called New Habits, Patterns, and Traditions. And I'm saying that we have to say hello and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, because we are going to be discussing in this fifth edition of the biennial. In this 2020, we're having this special edition because of the global pandemic, and we are going to have special guests today, artists from different latitudes around the world. So we are going to see if we can connect in this 4.0 platform and be able to find points of contact where we can think about the three axes that we mentioned for our roundtable today. So first, I'm going to introduce the people participating in this roundtable. A very brief presentation because they're going to, each of them is going to start talking and probably share something else about their experience with us. So let's start with Mariela Sherewi, who's a guest that is a friend of ours, and she's been with the biennial for many of the editions. She's a creator and the director of the Masters of Electronic Creation in the University of 3 de Febrero. She has a very long career with a variety of modes with video installations, interactive installations. She's doing a new intervention in the public space in Buenos Aires in these days, also with Gabriela Golder. And we also have in this roundtable from Singapore, something that is very joyful for us to know that despite the limitations and the constraints, we have people who are present here with us. We have Yang Yun Shen. Yang Yun is a doctor and she has an animation practice and she does installations too. And her works are always paying attention to the aesthetic and chronologic modes of the body. Some of the presentations she's done is she's mentioning your work, Yang Yun. And Yang Yun is also an artist with a long career that is very welcome. You can and you can see that through the many awards she's got. Then also from Singapore, we have Mark Chua and Xuen, two filmmakers, two artists whose track record and artistic practices show the possibilities of resistance in production of a narrative. And their work has also covered many festivals around the world. They have opened in the Singapore Movie Festival with a feature called Evolution. And then they went to Brazil, the United States. So we are very happy to have them on board and to have these distinguished guests with us. And then we're going to have Claudia Schmitz sometime. She's going to connect, we hope. But for the time being, now I'm going to give the floor to our guests. And we're going to go around the table with the introductions, and we're going to give you the floor to introduce your work, especially the part that has to do with the choral project that found all of us thinking about the pandemic and art, which is looking at you in the eyes and to go back to that. So we have all of these artists and some of us who found in the production of all of the guests, as well as Florencia, who's not going to be able to join us today. But as I was saying, we have found in the work of these artists some common points about how to think and what's the perspective today. What are the aspects that the pandemic or the situation has boosted? Some of the aspects that were re-semanticized, about opening windows and thinking about an interior space. All of us who have gone through this new symbolization process because of confinement, because of the lockdown that put us together in a network of vulnerabilities because of this very special historic situation. So I have spoken enough by way of introduction, and I'm going to go around the table in the same order that I introduced you. We're going to start with Mariela, then Yang Yung, and then Mark and Lee.
Gracias,
Okay.
Cristina, por
Thank you, Cristina, for your presentation,
hablo, voy a
for your introduction.
pantalla,
And I want to share my screen to go with my words. Okay.
¿Se ve el video?
Can you see the video? No. We are looking at the guts of your computer, but not the video. I think I need to run the video. Sorry, give me a second
en el navegador se ve.
to be able to run the video.
Sí, ahora, momento, ya estoy.
Okay, it will be 1 minute.
A ver. Bueno. No, no lo puedo correr.
I cannot run it.
Sí,
you want to run the video, it's called Lejía.
No, yo iba a hablar y después comparto yo pantalla de otra parte. Primero Lejía y después Abandono. ¿Dónde empieza el abandono?
We're going to see Lejía and then another one called Abandono.
Como fondo, o sea, no, o sea que esté de fondo mientras hablo.
Abandon.
Entonces tengo que
The idea is to have that as a background as I speak.
Ahí
so I'm going to stop sharing and.
Bien.
Okay, bueno, you're going to show my video.
Gracias por
anyway,
la presentación, Cristina.
Thank you for the introduction, as I was saying. Thank you, Cristina.
Simplemente quería referir un poco a este
simply
primer
wanted to refer to this first moment when I came on board with the BIM
cuando recién empezaba la pandemia,
proposal when the pandemic started. At the very beginning, Gabriela Golder,
colega, amiga,
who's a colleague of mine and a friend of mine, told me what the idea of this BIM was, because there was a lot of uncertainty at the beginning on how it was going to come into being, but the idea was to start by generating something that was a communal space to share this these experiences that had to do with the lockdown. As you said in our introduction, I have been working because I have a career in audiovisual, but audiovisual recently in my work
en formatos más físicos, dentro de
has to do with more
esculturas u
physical
objetos.
formats within
Me
sculptures
gusta
or
la
objects.
tridimensionalidad, vengo
I like
trabajando bastante más
tridimensionality, and
una
I've been
idea más
working on
tridimensional.
a more
Pero
three-dimensional
esta
idea.
idea de
But this
de
idea
empezar
about
o de retomar
starting
el
to
video casi como
work
un
with
espacio
video
íntimo, interno, a mí
as if it
me
were
parecía
an inner
muy
space
seductora.
was very seductive for me.
También me parecía muy seductora porque en ese
I
momento
also felt it
estamos
was
hablando del
seductive
inicio del
because,
aislamiento acá en
again, at the
Argentina.
very beginning of the
Yo
lockdown here in Argentina,
sentía que tenía que
I
reinventarme
felt that I
temporalmente.
had to reinvent
La noción
myself
del
in the
tiempo había
temporal
cambiado
axis because the notion of
rotundamente,
time had changed
y me tenía que
radically,
conectar con otros
and I had
tiempos,
to
tenía que
connect with
encontrar otros
time in a
ritmos.
different way. I had to
Y
change
entonces
my
un poco
rhythm.
los trabajos que yo hice fueron 4
So some of the
videos.
works that I conducted were 4
Los 4
videos.
videos tienen que ver de alguna
These 4
forma
videos
con
somehow have
encontrar
to
mis
do
ritmos.
with
Y los
changing
ritmos,
rhythms.
en
And the
general,
rhythm
yo
in general
hago todos videos donde hay gestos
is
repetitivos.
about videos
Necesitaba
with
como
repetitive
encontrar estos
gestures.
patrones, ¿no? Que
I
es un
needed
poco
to
el título
find
de la muestra,
patterns,
encontrar
which is
ciertas
the
regularidades.
name of our roundtable, to
Irregularidades desde
find
el gesto
regularity.
que tiene que
Regularity
ver
on the
con una
basis of
minucia, algo
gestures
que
and
es
small gestures,
nimio,
details,
hasta intrascendente,
some
como limpiar una cebolla, como
intrascendent
limpiar una papa.
acts like cleaning a
Este
potato, for
gesto
example, with
repetitivo
bleach.
que de alguna forma
These
fue
are repetitive
ritmando
gestures
mis tiempos
that
internos, ¿no?
were
A
a
partir
way
de
of
repetir el
representing
gesto,
my
yo
inner
podía
time.
conectarme con mi espacio
So
interior.
by repeating these
Entonces,
gestures, I
los
was able to
videos
connect
que
with
fui
my inner
haciendo,
space.
casi
So these
intuitivamente, no
videos,
es que yo
almost
tenía un plan y dije,
intuitively,
bueno, voy a hacer todos con gestos
because I didn't have
repetitivos,
a
pero
plan
es
of
cierto que
coming up with these repetitive
en ese primer
gestures.
momento
But
de la
it's true that
pandemia,
at the very beginning of the
yo me
pandemic,
encontraba
I
como
found
generando
myself
esto que tenía casi
generating
como un sentido ritual
this, which
y
was
como un
almost a
sentido, si se
ritual,
quiere, sanador, ¿no?
and
Un
it has a
sentido de
healing sense.
ritmológico, pero una
From the
ritmología que me
rhythm point
sanaba
of
y me
view, it was a
conectaba
rhythm
con
that was healing for
mi
me and
interior.
was and enabled me to connect
Así
with my
que,
inner
bueno,
timing.
Lejía, que es el que
So
estamos viendo, fue uno de los
this one is
fue el
call
primero
Lejía, which
que subí
means
al drive.
bleach.
Un
It's one
drive
of
que
the
se
first
iba
videos that I
llenando de a
put
poquito
on the
con las
drive,
contribuciones de
and
otros
I saw
artistas.
the contributions of
Y esto
other
también me generaba un
artists
inmenso
coming
placer
on this drive.
porque
And it was
podía
great
ver
to
qué
see
otros artistas
others
estaban haciendo y cómo otros
sharing their
estaban
contributions and
vivenciando
collaborations,
mismo
because
tiempo
it
que
enabled me to
estábamos
see how
compartiendo,
others
pero
were
que de alguna
experiencing
forma
this
era difícil
time
saber
that we were sharing, but
qué
it
le
was
pasaba al
difficult to
otro,
know
¿no?
what or how
Algunos
others were
conocidos, otros
experiencing
no
this.
conocidos.
Some
Y
others
otra cosa
were
que me
known
pasó
and some were
también
not
al hacer estos
known.
videos, si
And
querés
something
pasamos
that
al
happened
segundo,
to me,
donde
if
empieza
you
el
want, you
abandono,
can
se
share
llama,
the second one,
era
which is called
que en estos
Where
gestos
Abandonment
siempre hay una idea de un
Starts.
hacer, ¿no?
In these
De un
gestures, we
hacer
always have this idea
repetitivo
of
con
doing,
manos que son manos de
doing
mujeres.
something that is repetitive, and you see the
Son
hands
manos
of
femeninas que
women.
siempre están
It's
haciendo algo,
women's
que siempre
hands
están
always doing
ejecutando una
something. They are
acción.
always executing an
Eh,
action.
y bueno,
And
también para mí el hacer
for
es algo
me,
que tiene
doing
un sentido, no me gusta la palabra terapéutico, pero sí
is
un sentido, si
therapeutical,
se
although
quiere,
I don't
sanador,
like the word
¿no?
therapeutical, but it's healing
Eh,
somehow.
Cuando yo veo estos videos,
When I see
también
these videos now,
los
I
relaciono con obras pasadas, ¿no? Porque
connect them
finalmente estoy
with
haciendo
works
cosas que
from the
no
past,
llegan a un
because I'm doing
resultado
things that
específico, es el
do
hacer por
not have a
hacer. Y lo
specific
relaciono con obras
result.
pasadas como, por
It's just
ejemplo,
doing
Crudos
for
y
the sake of
Psíquicos,
doing.
una obra donde
So
yo tengo robots que caminan
I
sin ningún objetivo.
I
Es
connected with the work
simplemente
that I did
llevar
with
su cuerpo
robots
casi como un destino, ¿no?
that
Y en este
didn't
hacer
have a
está
precise
mi
destination.
cuerpo,
They
mis
were just
manos, en
carrying
algunos
their
casos, en otros
weight
casos las manos
as
mis
if
hijas, que
their
son manos de
being
mujeres,
was a
que estamos
destination.
haciendo.
In this case, you see on the
Y no
video
hay un
the
destino,
hands
no hay
of
una
women. They are
ambición
my
de un
daughters,
resultado
actually.
final.
And there's no ambition
sino
about a final
una
result,
ambición
but
de seguir
rather
haciendo.
an ambition of continuing with the
Y bueno,
doing.
para no hacerlo tan largo,
So I don't want to
pensando
extend too
también en este
much,
último tiempo,
but
que
thinking
finalmente el
about
hacer, o sea, yo en estos momentos tengo una nostalgia de
now,
aquel primer momento de
right
cuarentena.
now I have a
Tengo una
nostalgia
nostalgia
about
porque
the
me estoy dando
beginning of the
cuenta
quarantine,
que
because
no
I
es este el caso
realized
porque sé que
that
es un espacio de amigos y que
I know this
sé
is
que
a
es un
space where
espacio
we
informal, pero que
are
me
among
encuentro
friends,
en
but
una sobreproducción
I feel
académica
now
de
that
eventos
there's
públicos y pasando de
an
Zoom a Zoom,
overproduction of
donde
public events where
hay
you
un
go from
decir
Zoom
que
session to
ya para mí
another
se
Zoom
tornó
session,
incontrolable y
and I
siento
think
cierta nostalgia
that
de ese hacer primigenio, ¿no? Que
what
me
we're
conectaba
saying
más
now
con
is
mi espacio interior y
uncontrollable.
quiero volver
And
a
I
eso.
feel a certain
Pero
nostalgia of the
independientemente de
beginning of the
eso,
lockdown where
la
I was
experiencia
more connected
fue
with
muy
my
rica
inner
porque, por
space.
ejemplo, bueno, ahora estoy
Anyway,
compartiendo este
the
espacio con
experience
Jan
has been
Jung y
very
un día me encuentro que Jan
enriching
Jung
because I'm
hizo un
sharing
video
here with Yang
para la
Jung, for
sección, o sea,
example, and
hay una
I
sección en BIM que es la de
discovered that
diálogos, donde se ponen en diálogos
she
videos,
made a video for the
y hizo
dialogue
un
section
video
of
que de alguna
BIM,
forma estaba
and she
dialogando
made
con mis
a
videos. Entonces, para mí
video
fue
that to some
como,
extent
bueno,
was
en este
in a
hacer hay
dialogue
un
with my
conectarme con
videos.
alguien.
So it
Y bueno,
was
yo en
nice to
respuesta
see
hice
that
otro
in doing
video
I was
para Jan
connecting with
Jung, que es
someone.
el último que
And
está
I did another
colgado,
video for Yang Jung, which is the
cómo
last
matar el
one,
tiempo, matar el tiempo, si
called
querés lo podés
Killing
largar.
Time. We can see it now,
Y
if you could
entonces,
share that
para
one.
mí esta experiencia, o lo que propuso la BIM
And
como espacio
this
de encuentro, fue muy
experience of
rico
what
también en ese
BIM
sentido. No
proposed
solo es el último,
as a
ese.
common
Quise matar
space,
el tiempo. No
it's called
solamente
I
porque,
Wanted to Kill
bueno,
Time, this
me
video that
conectó
we are
con un hacer,
seeing.
pero además mi hacer se
As I
conectó con
said,
otros
the
haceres,
space in
¿no? Con el
BIM
hacer de Jan Jung, que
connected
nunca
me with
la habíamos
my way
conocido y
of
recién
doing,
hoy nos
and
vemos en
it also
persona,
connected
virtualmente y
me
en el
with
formato
Yang
online.
Jung, for
Pero
example,
estos
in
días
her
cuando me
videos and
dijeron,
in
bueno,
her
vamos a hablar
doing.
de esta mesa de
So
los patrones y
when
demás,
they proposed this
empecé a
roundtable about
pensar que
patterns and
también la
habits,
repetición tiene un sentido
I
hasta
thought that
poético, ¿no? Y tiene que ver con esto del
repetition has a
ritmo.
poetic
Y
sense
encontraba, y con esto
connected to
termino,
rhythm.
una poesía.
And I
Si querés, si me dejas compartir,
found
Cristina, dejas de compartir
a
vos.
poem, maybe I can share it.
Dale. Bien. Ahí creo que se ve.
There you go.
¿No? Y nada, había encontrado
And I found
esta
this
poesía de
poem
Girondo,
by
Oliverio que es un
Girondo.
caligrama, ¿no? Una poesía visual.
It's
Y
a
donde está esta
calligram.
idea de
You can see
repetición.
the
Y me daba ganas de
visual
leerla porque de
presentation,
alguna
and I
forma tiene que
wanted
ver
to
con
read it because it
estos
connects with
ritmos
the idea of
y
rhythm
estos
and
ritmos
repetition.
que por ahí no
And
tienen una concreción
these
final, pero
rhythms
a la larga
that
van construyendo una forma, como esta
build
poesía de
a way
Girondo,
of
que van
expressing
construyendo
ourselves, like
una
this poem
forma
by
en el espacio-tiempo.
Oliverio Girondo
Y
in the
dice,
space-time
yo no sé
continuum.
nada, tú no sabes nada, usted
The
no
poem
sabe
says,
nada.
I don't
Él
know
no sabe
anything,
nada,
you
ellos no
know
saben nada.
nothing.
Ellas no saben nada,
They know
ustedes no
nothing,
saben
he
nada.
knows
Nosotros
nothing,
no sabemos
they know
nada.
nothing, they know
La
nothing.
desorientación de mi
You know
generación tiene
nothing,
su
we know
explicación
nothing.
en la
The
dirección de nuestra
disorientation of my
educación,
generation is
cuya
explained in the
idealización de
direction
la
of our
acción era,
education,
sin discusión,
where
una
idealization of the
mistificación
action was no
en
discussion and
contradicción
mystification,
con nuestra
in
propensión
contradiction
a
with
la
our
meditación, a la
propensity to meditation,
contemplación
to
y a la
contemplation and
masturbación.
masturbation.
Gutural, lo más
Guttural,
guturalmente que
it
se
is
pueda.
the most guttural you can.
Creo
I
en lo
believe
que
that I
creo que no
believe in what
creo.
I believe that I don't
Creo
believe.
que no creo
I
en lo
believe
que
that I
creo
don't
que
believe in
creo.
what I
Cantar de
believe
las
I
ranas
believe.
y
The
subo las
singing of the
escaleras
crows.
arriba y
I
bajo las
go up the
escaleras
stairs and I go
abajo.
down the stairs.
Allí está, aquí no
That's
está.
where it is. It's
Allá
not here.
está, acá no
It is
está.
there, but
Y
it's
subo
not
las
here.
escaleras arriba
I go
y
up and
bajo
down
las
the
escaleras
stairs,
abajo.
and I go up the
Y un
stairs
poco
and down the
creo
stairs.
que el trabajo tiene que ver con esto, de subir,
And I
bajar
think our work
escaleras,
has to do
no
with this,
saber
with going
nada,
up the
creer
stairs
que
and
no
down the
está,
stairs
no
and
saber
knowing
en qué
nothing
creo,
and believing
pero
nothing
finalmente
and
generar
not
un
knowing what
ritmo
we
que cobra
believe, but
cuerpo y
in
toma
the
forma.
end generate a rhythm that becomes a form. Thank you, Mariela, for sharing that. It was very nice. So to continue with this first round of introductions and presentations, to exchange ideas and put ideas in common, I'm going to give the word to Yang Yung. I'm pronouncing it the Italian way, maybe. I don't know.
No, Yan Yun is correct. Hello, my name is Yan Yun, and thank you so very much for having me here and for inviting me to be part of BIM. It's been an honor. It's also been a pleasure to be part of this dialogue. And I'm very fond of the way the Coral Project has been presented, in the sense that you never quite know, like Mariella says, what's coming up next in the next step as you click around the website. It's been a joy. So I thought today I might share also my screen here, if that's okay.
Goes, yes, please.
Let me just stop share. Sorry, wrong screen. Yes, this is the one. Okay. Yes. Did you see my screen?
Yes, we do.
So I'm a visual
Yes.
artist with a background in animation. So a lot of the way I think had been trained very narratively. And one of the concerns I have practicing in the visual arts, it's about the idea of the artist as a witness, witnessing things that are happening, witnessing things that are passing and changing. And I use a lot of images of florals and bodies in my work, because one of the things I discovered along the way is that flowers are not actually still. They move, they wilt, they turn towards the sun. They go through all kinds of changes at different speeds, and very much different from a human body, but very alike as well. But a human body is evolving at just all the time, and it's about paying attention and slowing down and being witness to the subtleties that arrive with all these changes. So the works that I'm showing here is, a lot of them are actually my charcoal drawings, which I spent a long time making, of flowers, and also of the chase, because I work with them live. So the flowers are constantly wilting and kind of changing as I'm drawing them. It's a bit of this weird relationship that I have with flowers, and also this kind of slightly morbid idea of being witness to flowers wilting as then becoming part of my practice. And so in that sense, during the pandemic, I was really considering this role again. Like, what is the role for me as an artist witnessing in a space that I cannot leave? What does it mean, my relationship with plants and nature and flowers, now that I don't see them, since I'm just at home most of the time? And in Singapore, it's a city, so it's very dense and you don't really get nature close by. So it's not like you can reach it easily. So when I was thinking about the project for BIM, and I'll show you here, I thought maybe I'll just play it since it's very, very short. And I hope you can hear the sound. I started Furious Fires #1 because I live by myself, and having not spoken to people in person for a while, I spend a lot of time hearing myself breathe, and the breathing is really loud since there isn't much other sounds around. And so when I was doing this piece and kind of recording a time lapse of these flowers, I was hearing my own breathing as I was working through the images. And somehow this connection came together when I played the images at quicker speeds. It becomes like a bit of a stop motion animation. And looking at this kind of artificial pulsing of flowers wilting and this combination of the bodily sounds with the floral images, I just thought it was quite funny and also a bit dark, and sort of put together this little piece as a contribution to the idea of me being witness to the plants witnessing me, and spending time with these natural items. And when I contributed this into the drive, I got to see many other artists' works. I got to see Mariella's work. I believe it's called Bleach in English, the one you just shared. And I was very taken by this repetition of the spray. And I find myself spraying a lot of things, cleaning, spraying my plants. And given that this voice of the lungs and the breathings, I just found I thought that would be interesting to have another extension to the next conversation piece. And also, I think I saw a Los Gravidos work, and they're very abstract films. And I thought it was also curious that now little things like if someone breathes a little bit louder, if they cough or they sneeze in public, everyone flinches. It's no longer just something that you won't think too much about, but suddenly these sounds become very prominent, especially during a pandemic, and people start to treat you suspiciously if you happen to just cough. And I find myself having to hold back my coughs or like my sneezes, just like trying to cover myself up and not do this in public. And I thought, would it be interesting to then take that and amplify it, in a way that then just to have I guess I was just thinking whether someone would flinch hearing these sounds now, even in a film, whether it becomes this artificially enhanced sensation. And sometimes your body cannot help making these sounds. So I thought that it would be an interesting kind of experiment. So Furious Fires number 2 came about from those thoughts, and I'll just play it here as well. And so behind the sprays of mist and water, images of flowers wilting, and it's actually the same set of flowers as from Furious Fires number 1. And during this period, I found myself losing words. I guess when you don't have as much conversations with people as before, you kind of start losing your ability to converse. So I was losing language. And also, witnessing the things in the news and feeling the isolation. There was this kind of feeling in the body which is heated up, but you don't really have words for it. So sometimes you can be frustration or anger or sadness, or even little things that make you happy, but there's no language for it. So when I made these works, I just thought that using the sounds and images to replace for that feeling of fever in the body, as trying to come out, but it's interrupted and hesitant, and not flowing, and that sometimes the strongest feelings feel like you're burning inside, and it feels also like when you're sick, when you're having a fever, you're burning up inside. So it was also then. I was very grateful and also kind of shocked with Mariella's latest piece, the one with the sounds of the crash, with the rocks and the placement of the rocks, because the sounds were so loud, and it was just very shocking at something very peaceful as stacking rocks, which is sometimes a meditative practice. And I just fell in love with this ability to dialogue through film, and dialogue without using words and language, and to be able to be in this universe of films and images and sounds, and to collectively sort of try to describe a period we're in without trying to analyze or justify or putting words into something that's perhaps still too complex to be spoken about and not enough distance. So that's where Furious Fires came from in my thought process, and also how it weaves into the practice that I do with flowers and black and white. And yeah, that's that's what I like to share. Thank you so much for having me here. Let me pause, stop the screen.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Yang Yung, for your testimonial and for the generosity of explaining your creative process, which is something that is very sincere and generous. In the meantime, we have Claudia Schmitz. I want to welcome her. We are going around the table doing the first round to share the works of the artists in the platform in this exchange that you just heard about with Yang Yung. We are sharing and putting in a common place the narrative of how we did the piece and also the dialogues that came into being by sharing in the platform. So if you think that's all right, we have heard Mariela, we had just heard Yang Yung, and now we're going to give the floor to Mark and Lee and then Claudia, okay?
Hello. Hi. I can only Mark and I'm Nishan. So we are Singaporean. Oh, okay.
Eso.
Okay.
If you go
we are
down
Singaporean
on the
filmmakers.
So they are explaining to Claudia how to connect to the interpreting.
Oh, okay, sure. Okay, we'll wait a while.
Okay. Claudia needs to find the interpreting channel so that she can hear the translation into English.
Oh, okay.
An icon like the globe. And you choose the language. You click on there and you choose the language.
Okay. But my question is also, are we already in the talk? Because I get a time that at 4 o'clock and here's now 3:42. So I was wondering.
¿Sabes cuál creo que fue la confusión? Yo ahora te estoy hablando desde Italia y me pasó algo a mí
I
también.
think there was a confusion. I'm in Italy, and we forgot that there was a change in the time in Italy. So she got the wrong information. Now she's explaining that there used to be 5 hours difference, and now it's 4, or the other way around. I don't know. And there was a problem. That's why Claudia came on board a little late.
So we are already in. So talk about my work.
Bienvenida.
So I already asked. Maybe you can show it on the website.
Sorry, Claudia, but she was saying that the order we're going to follow is, she was explaining before that we are in the first round of presentations. We had Mariela, Yang Yung, now we're going to have Mark and Lee, and then you. Then it's your turn, okay? You can show your work and explain the whatever you want to share with us, okay? So we are going to give the floor without further ado to Mark and Lee.
Hello. Yeah. Hi, we are Mark and Nishan. We are filmmakers from Singapore. And most recently,
Por favor, please, I need you to speak very loud.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay. Is this better? Is this better? Yes. Okay.
Yes,
So we
scream.
are okay. We are filmmakers from Singapore, and most recently we've put out our 2 experimental narrative feature films. And so these 2 features that we worked on, I think the thread between them was that they were both made outside of Singapore. And the first was in Australia and the second was in Japan. And also another linking thread between the both is that they were both made in collaboration with artists and musicians kind of different crafts coming from different backgrounds in these two countries.
Right. And then we were kind of thinking also with those films how we could simply utilize kind of accessible, available technologies to the average person and to engage in some kind of time and space creation in dialogue and action, but across borders and with the production of both in the production of the film, but then also taking it further later on and kind of getting that further collaborations and dialogues with the films. So I mean, we kind of always wondered with that if it was just an ideal or can we through the practice put it out there and find further possibilities through that. And so I think with that we kind of see such a value in the physicality of it, where a collaboration and communication by just being there with others really kind of open many of the branches and pathways to kind of creating through the medium of film to this kind of collective expression and dreaming. But of course, with this year and the pandemic, it's been kind of that curveball to the openness of that approach that really was so much more organic, and it kind of allowed all of us and our collaborators and us as well to kind of squeeze through different structures and the cracks between them. But then now it's kind of so different in terms of the landscape, in terms of how accessible some ways of production used to be. And so with our film, The Miners.
Yes, I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't think we know how to share our screen, but I mean, maybe we'll just talk a bit about our
Do you want me to share the video in the platform?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe that would be better. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, also like we're also kind of like getting used to trying to work out all these things.
Yeah, so we're really happy to have the chance to contribute this piece to the BIM 2020. And I think when we heard about the idea for this project from Gabriela, I think we were really excited because I think this year has been a time of very much confinement or less interaction with other people, and so we feel that this project has kind of opened up this space where we can just have our work in dialogue with each other together and freely, so that's something that we really love about this whole project.
And right.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, with miners on the second wall, what happened was we were actually kind of at the beginning of the year, just when the pandemic was picking up, it's getting worse, and then we really felt that we actually caught a bunch of this footage for we're kind of just going through ideas, trying to see if we could work out a new project, but then as the whole pandemic developed, and eventually there was a kind of a lockdown in Singapore as well. We kind of were at home a lot, and then we kind of started listening to our surroundings more as well, and then you would hear these birds constantly.
And these birds are actually seen as kind of intrusive in Singapore, like kind of like pests.
Invasive species.
Invasive species. Yeah, but they're always all around everywhere, and we kind of just take them as invisible after a while. Yeah, but I think
and so we became so much more aware of them around our housing block.
Yeah,
and then so we wanted to kind of dive into that, and the other thing too that we noticed being in the effects of the pandemic here was also kind of the conversations that were going on around us, and it almost kind of felt two sides of the same thing, where we had a much conversation of just kind of when could we get out there again, when could we bask in the light more, and so it sort of made that mental image link in our mind, and so we thought to create this piece that kind of simply put us there and listening to the same sounds, and then also observing these birds that really, in some sense, also kind of find their way through the cracks, because what happened post the lockdown here was also that there was a ramp up of construction activity. I think construction sector was trying to get everything done.
Yeah, because it had to pause during the lockdown. So once the lockdown was lifted, then I think a lot of activity was just
a lot of
flooding
construction
in.
activity, and then they kind of cleared out all the nests as well, like the one picture here. But
I don't know if I forgot to mention, but this is actually downstairs from where we live in
right.
our apartment building. Yeah.
Yes. And so they cleared out all the nests. There was a big reconstruction project, but then within like a month or two of that construction project being done, they're all right back. And I think that's also to us interesting in terms of kind of with our working with the film and the medium too. We always wanted to see how we could exploit work our way through those cracks and kind of overcome
kind of position ourselves in between of structures, organizations, that kind of thing. Yeah. And so I think just now something that Yan Yun was saying was interesting, which is when we are in confinement, we listen to ourselves more. And I think building on that, we listen to ourselves, and then we also listen to kind of our surroundings and the relationship between ourselves and our surroundings more during the lockdown period here. So I think the kind of sense of awareness changed a little during the lockdown, in that we listened more. Maybe we perceived more commonality between ourselves and also between these birds that were all along always.
Also because previously the works was like always traveling out. It was much easier to travel and kind of I always go, have camera or travel. You can make that happen. But then how can we then work with everything that's happened and then still
in that sense,
that
definitely it's changed in that way. So I think it's interesting in that kind of the relationship between ourselves and also the things that are going on around us, around our lives, has been something that we've been thinking about more during the lockdown as well.
Right. So I mean, we just feel generally everyone's been or that we've been hearing about has been pretty kind of fed up with everything that you've got to work around, and the new boundaries of the pandemic, and even in work, like with film productions and putting on a festival, and it's been so many hurdles to make that happen. And so I don't know, we see we hear and see kind of multiple angles of thoughts that are kind of like how can we push those boundaries even with other more not so, how do you say, even in unsafe ways, how those boundaries can be pushed, but then as jokes or flights of fancy, and even to the point of I guess the risk with the pandemic. But then at the same time, we wonder if maybe those that altering of our habits of complaint or habits of joking in that sense, you know, what if that could shift that horizon too, of where maybe there might be more understanding of the notions of risk and fed upness that's all along actually also proposed by many artists and initiatives, you know. Perhaps it might be interesting how through those complaints and jokes
yeah, we're interested to see how you know, things will evolve as we go along, and how
but it's also very cool, right?
Yeah.
Like to see how you can also start with dialogues through the films and through different works, through all the conversations that are also more accessible now, with slightly tricky, but then also more accessible with it going online and
Bene, muchas gracias. Muchas gracias por compartir su experiencia.
Thank you so very much for sharing your experience
y todo
and all of your thoughts around these times that are so strange and shared at the same time. There's a U.S. academia expert that put on the table the issue of interdependence at this very globalized time. But despite globalization, it is also a time where the borders are a short circuit. So thinking about borders, now it's the perfect introduction to speak with Claudia and Claudia's work.
The floor is yours.
So the floor is yours.
Yeah, I take it. So, hola a todos. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm so sorry that my Spanish isn't good enough to talk to you, but I hope it's okay doing this in English. So thank you for the invitation. So my work, my name is Claudia Schmitz. I'm based in Germany. My work starts where the media intersect. So this is a good summarizing. And I'm not interested in the modernity of technology as such, but in its capacity for creating new imaginary dimensions. So my interest is to explore boundaries, like limits of perception, real and imagined barriers, liquid processes, body discourses, and also paradigms of media translation. As a solo artist, but also in collaborative projects. So there, in this kind of project, I met also Gabriela and Mariela last year, 2 years before in Argentina. Oh, it's a long time ago. So for example, one of my projects, so-called Unstum, it's organized and curated by myself. And we are inviting artists to do a conversation between moving image and sound. And I was on tour in Mexico in March and came back on the 16th of March directly into the lockdown in Germany. So it was a very crazy situation because in Mexico there maybe 1 or 2 cases of corona in this moment, or maybe 5, but then it exploded all over the world, and I came directly back into this lockdown in Europe. So this means I landed in Paris, and I think so most of you know Charles de Gaulle. It's normally completely crowded, and it was completely empty, really empty. Everything was closed, and it was a very, very crazy situation. But so here in Germany, only to let you know, it's a good situation, and I want to say thank you to my government, because they are really helping us with possibilities, with fundings. I'm also starting now to invite artists from outside to share the money of Germany, because we have wonderful possibilities to do it. So I want to say thank you for this. Yeah, so I was also very happy to get this invitation to the biennial, and I really, really, really love your work. It's an incredible programmed website, and I love to do this kind of gaming to find my work in which kind of combination. Always these new formats and the new combined ways. It's incredibly good. I really love it. So thank you very much again. So maybe I can share I try it now. So maybe I can share it here. So this is my series in between. I started with this kind of work. So I react waste. So I go into the cities and collect plastic bags. And, I combine it to wind activate sculptures. And so I reform them into screens and sculptures. I put a video on video. I took it from the Mediterranean. It is, yeah, let's say it like creating deeply ambiguous impressions of leisure and drowning, because it's a subjective camera perspective, and you don't know if the person, if you can see it's swimming or drowning. So it's based in Europe, but I brought them. I started in Berlin at the Wall, and then I was in New York. I was also in Budapest, in Hong Kong, or also in Chemnitz in Germany, which was before Karl-Marx-Stadt, before the wall came down. So I bring them everywhere. I see a connection. So you can see also Ellis Island here in New York. I installed it also directly on the Wall Street, which was in the first idea, a wall against the locals over there before. So this is an ongoing project. So I will go everywhere I find a chance to install it, and where it's sendful. But so I had a residency in 17 in Korea, in South Korea, and I was wondering if there's maybe a chance to do the same or not. And I decided not to do it. And I created this work, which is also part of the series, so-called Invisibles. And it's about the special situation in South and North Korea. But this is only the first part of the work, because I was only in South Korea, so I have to go to North Korea to project. And as a German, it's possible to do it. So maybe after Corona, I can go there and I will finish it. So I took some video material. It's on the north to North Korea. It is always the view from south to north. And I was also in Jeju-do. This is an island in the south of South Korea. This was also the view from south to north, but in the Korea. And I took also Jeju-do because it's a very special situation. They had a special law. I think so it stopped now, but it gave a lot of refugees the possibility to come over South Korea to the West. So it was very interesting. And then maybe I can show my work from the website if it's possible, because I decided then to develop a new art piece. Can you share it? Hello?
Yes.
Can
you
you
want
share?
me to share the yes, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. I was
because this is a work I created during the lockdown, because I was invited from a gallery to do to show my artist books. It's a gallery which is showing books, but in an installation way. So you will present your book and you install in the gallery something about it. And I created a of the series In Between, the first art piece I showed you, with a question, how can I put an intervention into a book with video? And it's many layers, and you can organize it by yourself in an idea of Munari. But then I asked myself, because of the lockdown, how maybe there's a possibility to show another art piece, because my exhibition was postponed from April to September. And then I started this art piece, and I choose it also for the biennial. It's so-called In Between Liquid Borders. It's part of In Between, and the gesture of drawing borders and letting barriers disappear questions the sense of existence as well as the relevance of them. So in times of the pandemic and the new legislation, new regulations for travel and social interaction, the relevance of borders is all the more important to investigate, as are questions of unity, the whole, like Karen Garrett said, and distribution of privilege. So this is a work about it, and it's also part, I have a second part of the work, it's a Leporello, with these kind of borders I draw, and I draw it in with a cyanotype process. So you have different parts, visible and invisible, and yeah, it's this kind of Leporello is yeah, a dedicated device, and I think you know why. Yeah.
Thank you. I don't know if leave the video while we are. Yeah, maybe I will. While we.
Yeah, but I can explain it to you. So I'm drawing borders in different ways. I drawing it and I delete it in the same way, so you can see both of it. Because of the relevance, I asked myself. It is this kind of pandemic for all of us, I think so. Not only for me, who's traveling a lot and I cannot travel now anymore, but also this kind of fear and this kind of distancing, and because I'm normally a person who's hugging always the people I love, and now for 2 days before I had a performance with 2 musicians, and we want to say thank you to our audience, and it wasn't possible because we wanted to, but then we stopped this kind of hugging. So no abrazotes. Yeah, it was a very strange moment also for me after this long time of distancing, but it will never stop, and it will change our habitations and our how we normally are doing a lot of stuff and things. And I think so this is a work which is really talking about it. Relevance.
Gracias. Gracias a ti,
Thank you.
Claudia. Voy a,
Thank you, Claudia.
a dejar de compartir la pantalla.
So I'll stop sharing the screen.
Bueno, bien, ahí apareció un gatito. Seguro.
¿Quiénes han tenido la
Now we just saw a cat, and whoever had the chance to be in the Coral Project, looking at you in the eye, there's a section about cats and pets. And at a certain point, we thought about organizing a round table about cats, because in this confinement and in the lockdown, in the first wave and the second wave, we have discovered that maybe the pattern to continue working on the topic of this roundtable, the pattern that became more familiar to us is our little cats. So thank you for showing your cat, Yang Yung. So before we continue and move on to the dialogue part of the roundtable, I want to remind our audience that if they have questions, they are welcome. You can write your question in the chat, or we can break the ice and the borders of our roundtable. And to break the ice, I'm going to start with the first question. Rather than a question, is a number of considerations. Right now, I'm sitting at a white table that is full of my stuff that I started to write down as you talked. And I think that there's a red thread that we can think about in the ways in which we have tried to inhabit looking at you in the eye. And it has to do with realizing that there's a change in the perception of time. The way in which we perceive and feel time has changed. And I noticed that in the gestures of Mariela's work. And Mariela, you mentioned a piece that you showed looking at your daughters, compiling the names and writing the names of people who suffered domestic violence, and put the names so that they are seen and so that they can find a new way of living in their place. That patience, one of your daughters was reading, and then and the other one of your daughters was writing this and putting them on the wall. I think it's a very interesting way of rethinking about the new waiting times. And also in Yang Jung's work, the relationship of withering flowers and the time you devoted to listening to your own breathing. That's a very interesting gesture, and a gesture that shows political commitment, because despite of the pandemic, this time has seen a resurge of rage. The rage had been dormant, maybe had been under painkillers to some extent in the US, but it came back. There was a dormant rage that went back on the streets, especially when we think about breathing. You also think, or you are reminded of the "I can't breathe" motto because of the movements in the United States. And clearly, this is an existential point, and it's the inheritance of many political decisions that go to sustainability and the connection between coughing and the fear and flinching. It's something that I share completely, because in my daily life, every time I want to sneeze, I have to think, oh, how am I going to go about this in a public space? How do I breathe in the public space? And how do I cough in the public space? So it's a different way of thinking about time and breathing, which can become a new political gesture. And when we heard about Mark and Lee's work, it was very poetic. That beautiful little narrative that you made showing your garden, as you probably saw in the platform, we found 4 axes, because in this temporal space that was changing for everybody, there were themes that also changed. So finding a way of telling a story in your small garden with that poetic and with that imagery, and providing a certain space for the birds, for the animal side, is a very good way of thinking about contemplation and thinking about time and thinking about the natural life with shorter narratives. And I think in the press around the world, during the time of the pandemic, there was a narrative, especially at the beginning, of the animals that were occupying the cities and the urban spaces. So I think it's very interesting to find this theme in this new time for contemplation of urban animals, whether it is in Singapore, Argentina, Italy, Germany. It can happen everywhere. So with that, I want to move on to Claudia's comments. I liked her proposal too. What you shared on the BIM platform, you also think about time and timing and the different aspects that were given to us as a gift. And we need to think about how to move on and continue in this new normal, or whatever you want to call it. But it's clear that it's necessary to rethink about our timing in terms of new habits too. And that's one of the axes for our dialogue. So if there are no other questions from the audience, I will try to make this fluent. I just gave you some of the points to think about, and if you want to take the floor, you're welcome.
Bueno, sí.
Okay, I will.
No, me parece interesante
I think
lo que
it's
señalás,
really
Cristina.
interesting
En el
what
caso
you're
mío,
saying,
bueno,
Cristina.
trajiste
In
a
my case,
cuento un video al que no me referí, pero que
you are talking about one of
está
the
bueno
videos
que
that I
hubieras
didn't
hecho
show right
referencia,
now,
porque,
but
bueno, yo
it's
hablé de
interesting that
la
you bring
repetición
that
o de
to the
encontrar como
table, because
ritmos, pero que también son
I
ritmos
thought
que
I
construyen
spoke
memoria.
about
Y esto a mí me parece
rhythms,
importante.
and
A
rhythm
mí un poco
builds memory also.
esta idea de nueva
And
normalidad me
this
genera un
idea
cierto
of the new
escozor, ¿no?
normal gives me the
Es un término
chills
que no me gusta
a
nada,
little bit.
esto de
I
nueva
don't like the term
normalidad, ¿no? Es como,
new normal.
como una idea de
It's
tabla
like an
rasa
idea
de
of
todo, y es como
tabula
que se abre una
rasa,
nueva
like
instancia de algo
starting from scratch,
y no hay memoria de lo que pasó.
and there's
Entonces,
no memory
me
of what
parece
happened
también
before.
que es tiempo para
So
construir memoria,
I think it's
¿no?
a time to build
Y
memories
pensar en otro sentido, no sé si en nuevas
and to
normalidades.
think about
No me gusta eso,
not
no me gusta
not to think about the
pensar
new
que
normal.
hay
I
un
don't like
corte
that.
y
I don't want to think that there's
el pasado. Me
a
parece
clean
que
cut
hay que
from the
seguir
past.
ritmando este
I
tiempo
think that we need
a
to
construir
find a
algo
rhythm to
que
build
recoja la
something
experiencia
at this
pasada, que se haga
time
cargo,
that
que
collects the past
también
experience
genere,
and
porque
brings
además el
it.
término nueva normalidad
Because
me da
also
como
the term new
algo
normal
armónico,
makes
algo
me think about harmonious times,
crítico. Entonces,
but
también
without
estos
criticism.
espacios
It's
que tenemos los
acritical
artistas para
to some extent.
generar
So
patrones,
I
en
think
este
that these
caso, para
spaces where
generar
we have artists
gestos
that
repetitivos, son
generate
repeticiones
patterns
que tienen que ver
and
con la
repetitive
memoria
gestures
también y con la
have to do
resistencia,
with
¿no? Cuando
memory and
hablabas
with
de
resistance.
los sonidos que trabaja
when
Yang Jung y demás, hay una
we talked
idea
about
de
the sound that Yang
resistencia,
Jung
de
works with,
algo
there's an
que
idea of
disrumpe.
resistance, of
No
something
son
that is
escenarios
disruptive.
armónicos, sino
It's not a
escenarios
harmonious
disruptivos. Y
scenario,
también
but
pensaba
rather a
que,
disruptive scenario.
que cuando uno es chico
And
le
I
hacen
was
repetir a
thinking
veces
also that
para aprender,
when you're
¿no?
a kid,
Hay
people
toda
resort
una
to
técnica de la
repetition
repetición para el
as a
aprendizaje.
learning method. There's a
Que podemos
technique
estar
that
de
uses
acuerdo o no, pero lo
repetition
cierto
to
es que a
teach.
veces al
We may
repetir
agree
uno
with
va
that or
jalonando
not, but
y va
it's true
creando
that when you repeat,
una
there are
huella,
like
una memoria.
milestones,
Eso me parece
like
que
a
es importante.
trace, a memory,
Eso,
and I
quería
think that's
decir.
important to recover. Thank you. The dialogue is open, so whoever wants to take the floor or give their contribution, please do.
Maybe I'll just jump in. Thank you so much, Mariella and Christina. The idea of resistance and of being, of bringing in, of the fact that you've brought up the politics behind breathing and catching one's breath and, rebelling and resisting. And rhythm, as well as like breathing is a kind of rhythm, and the speed and the pace of inhaling and exhaling actually goes to show like how the body is responding to the times. One of the things that I found while making the work, as well as being in quarantine and just looking at the news, was that I couldn't catch my breath. I couldn't find words, and I found it difficult to even catch up with the news, like being able to read it and digest it and understand it and then think about it. It just felt like time was very much compressed, or the demands of time, needing me to have to respond in a certain way, needing me to have to adapt in a certain way. And I share Mariella's feelings about the term new normal. It makes like the rest of the time we've lived in like some kind of other normal, which is very strange because, given that things are constantly changing, which is the normal, which is the chosen majority of a normal, given that we're also from different parts of the world, and the crises that we face in different places, though shared, can be different, and they may wave in different times, like in different paces. Some might have more crisis than others in certain periods. So like when there's one, synchronize like the breathing or even catch up with each other in that sense. So I share that sentiment, regarding the term at least, which sort of disengages and disregards the rest of the different diversities and varieties of the ways of living, I would say. I didn't really talk about the I Can't Breathe movement and the BLM, also because I found myself on the other side of the world and reading, and responding, but also very distant. And it just so happened that these combination of images and sound came together in a way that made this piece also feel even more political than perhaps what I was intending to. But it cannot be helped. I don't think it's something that I just have to acknowledge but cannot avoid, which is also interesting considering that now we have a shared memory of an incident that is so powerful, prominent, and important that even geographies, is no longer a boundary for the way we understand an incident in another country. So I think there's something about breaking borders, like in Claudia's work, that's being is appearing in a very kind of practice sort of way, which is also kind of interesting about this engagement with nature in our sort of position in like Marx and Lishen's work. So I think it's really interesting, this combination of dialogues that even in this panel is happening, like between the works and between the practices and our feelings about the situation. So I'm very grateful for this. And I'll pass the mic on to the next person, like to continue the conversation.
Bueno, ¿quién quiere aprovechar de la invitación de Yanyun?
Okay, who wants to continue and take the floor after Yang Jung's invitation?
I want to ask the audience maybe to say something.
Bueno, yo pienso que mientras el público
I think that
va
while we give
a pensar
a
cuál
few minutes for the audience to think about what they want to share, in the meantime, we can contribute from our side of the dialogue with suggestions and our contribution to the dialogue, whoever wants to.
So maybe I say something what I was thinking about, because I talked about my screen and I showed you some images about it, and normally I'm writing or I'm using a text which is so it's questioning something about the work, or it's summarizing, and it's called it's about moving and free as opposed to being closed off in an airless space, about options and empowerment as opposed to being reduced to struggle for the barest necessity of survival. So the theory, it's about privilege and waste, abundance and misery, about geographic as well as social borders. And it returns the city's waste to the citizens in the form of art. So, but after the pandemic, or we are already inside of it, I was wondering if maybe everything changed completely. And this is something it's really hard to deal with. And therefore, I also showed you my art piece, which I sent to the BIM, because these kind of geographic and social borders are so different now. And I don't know, I completely agree with Mariella and not to use these kind of new normal or whatever does it mean, because normal is also, it's always a question, what is normal in a diverse world, and what then could be anyhow a new normal, because I think so there will never be something like this, because everything is now changed and mixed, and also some persons I know very good are now completely new people, because I couldn't understand them, how they deal, for example, with a situation. And this is something I was really wondering how we can go further. Is if the world we know, it's never existing. So also the people, they are very close to us maybe, or their fans or colleagues, are now completely far away, maybe because of new political ideas they talked about, or new kind of gestures they're using or not using. So I was really wondering if we can go further with it. I don't want to use the word back, because there is no back, I think so. And there's a new world, there's a new situation, and it will be maybe crazy if we're talking maybe 10 years later about this situation now, and would be interesting maybe to meet you then in 10 years again.
Inshallah. Let's hope. Mark and Lee, would you like to share something?
Okay.
Actually, maybe we wanted to ask everybody, because we were also curious, and this is something that we've been struggling with quite a lot in terms of a lot of the new limitations of the pandemic, and something that I think we've been trying to think of also is the opening up of new possibilities as well during this time. So we wanted to ask everybody in terms of creating work during this time and onwards in your practice. I guess what are some of the new possibilities that you can see
that did come out
or that you foresee that are going to come out of this time?
Maybe I answer directly, because this is very easy for me. Yeah, because I talked already about the project conversation of moving image and sound, and also Mariela and Gabriela was part of it in Argentina. So we normally travel and are coming with 4 artists from Germany, 4 video and 2 video and 2 sound artists, and we meet 2 and 2 also in Argentina, for example, and then we play together. And this isn't now any more possible. We decided to start with telematic performances and with everything in it, which is very, very difficult. So we are now, my colleague and myself, also Nicola and I, thought about it years before to do this, but now we took the chance because we have to do it now to be able to our colleagues and to go further and deeper inside of our performances. And we already did it and showed it on the Ars Electronica in the first sketch, that it called sketch, because it's not possible in a live version, but we are still programming it. So this is interesting because you are winning and losing something in this kind of so maybe because I'm working with projection onto sculptures normally in a digital and in an analog way. So I'm using projection in a space, but are destroying this kind of screen situation with my sculptures and giving back a video, something like a body. And so the question is, would be this body in a telematic situation? So in an augmented reality way, we're using it. So we're inviting the audience all over the world to be part of it with the mobile phones. But what does it mean if there's, for example, an augmented reality way? For me, there's no real space in it. I love to use it because I'm also walking with projectors in it, and I'm using all these kind of three-dimensional real situation. But now I have a virtual situation, which is so different, and it sometimes feels like there's no arm at my body, and somehow I have maybe more legs, or maybe I have 4 ears now, or something like this. So it is so different, and it's also crazy to have no audience, but to have maybe more audience than in any kind of performance before, because there is a virtual audience. There are a lot of people that can come and just for free, which is normally not possible because we are not streaming our performances. So what does it mean if you have an audience but there's no reaction of it? Maybe you have some commands later or some, but it is so different if you're on stage, or maybe in a space. If we are not always kind of stage situation. What does it mean if there's an audience but no reaction of it, and you cannot feel it during the performance, because normally you have these kind of you are interacting with all the people there in the space you're performing. So this is a very, very interesting situation for me, and I think so to go further with this kind of work will change work completely, also the work in these spaces. So I don't want to think about what I'm losing. I want to think about what am I winning. So I think so it is better to go deeper inside of this idea. Thank you.
Sí, gracias, Claudia, absolutamente. Mejor pensar
Thank
en
you,
lo que
Claudia. Yes, I
ganamos,
absolutely
en lo
agree. It's better to
en lo
focus
que
on what we are
perdemos.
winning rather than what we are losing. Also, it's a constant of artistic creation. Change is a constant in artistic creation. So it's good to shut down those rumors about new normal and think about the new social and political context of post-pandemic. I want to thank the interpreter and give the floor to Gabriela now.
En varios conceptos como
I was thinking about several concepts like the idea of normal or new normal or non-normal. And I wanted to focus on what Claudia was sharing. There's a point that there's something that we need to stop a little bit or reduce the anxiety about what is coming. I feel that many people on the street or people that I see on the streets or people around me are acting as if they had certainties, like we can do this, we cannot do that. But I think that this is the time to act with doubt, with not knowing. This time is a permanent discovery. It's like we are a little ant that tries to see what is possible and what is not. It's not like we should not think today that we will never have encounters with other people, because if that's the reality that we're facing, my life would be impossible. I don't want to make videos for a screen. If it is only for the screen, then I will do something else. And I will do something like the beam look you in the eye. But I cannot take more decisions than the ones we make little by little. In the meantime, we want to go back to looking at our eyes, but we know things will not be the same. After this and during this, there are many issues that have to do with politics, with our way of being and our way of doing in the planet. But what I'm saying is that we don't have to make radical decisions. We need to test the borders, test the limits, and see what we can and to what extent, and find a place where you feel comfortable. But in particular, what I want to say here, my point is that there are no certainties. And this is something that we share all over the world. Of course, there are artists that are being hit hard, especially the ones in performing arts and music. It's a problem. We don't have the same policy as in Germany, where they are sustaining culture. Here, we have been hit hard, and theaters are asking to be able to open again because there's no way other than that. But I feel I'm privileged to a certain extent because we have more time to see what works and how to move forward. We know the screen, but we don't want just telematic encounters. We need to take into account breathing, the rhythm, the coughing. We need to take that into account. Silence is not the same when you mute your microphone to the silence that you hear when you're present listening to something. Thank you, Gabriela. Now again, I'm going to invite the audience to please contribute or make questions or make any comments that you want via chat, or you can also unmute your microphone and take the floor and share with us. Something that Claudia said was true. This issue about expectation and uncertainty in virtual times. It's giving us a new meaning that we need to understand. And for example, how long are you supposed to wait in silence in front of a screen for somebody else's reaction? If you cannot hear their breathing, it creates a lot of uncertainty. Yeah, I'm thinking that in the meantime, we are weaving new relationships for the time when we can go out again. We are taking this time to know each other, which in the real beam, we wouldn't be able to have these encounters with more than 70 artists. So it's like getting ready and getting together so that when we can meet each other in person, okay, we have a history already. We have met already. It's like prep work. It's like weaving networks in the meantime.
Buenísimo, lo de ir tejiendo.
This idea of weaving is nice. I like it. I was thinking as I was listening to Claudia. For me, it is difficult to think about the future like with a crystal ball. I want to live intensely the now.
Y también me enganché con eso de que
I was
lo de
thinking
la ganancia
also
y la
about
pérdida,
this
que se gana, que se pierde,
winning or losing,
¿no?
what we win versus what we lose.
Cuando decía no hay ganancia
And
y
I was
pérdida, solo el
thinking
esfuerzo
about
por recuperar lo que se ha
a
perdido,
poet
¿no?
which
Y para mí
who
es
said,
un poco
there's no
eso, me
winning or
pasa eso
losing,
en
there's
estos
just an
momentos.
effort
Por
to
ejemplo,
recover
a mí,
what you
yo tenía un
lost.
proyecto para este año, un
So
proyecto
I had a
grande,
project for this
con
year, a
un
big project,
colectivo, la colectiva
with a
Ecoestéticas,
group
que habíamos ganado
called Eco Aesthetic.
Bueno, un subsidio para hacer una
And
intervención
we had
en
a
Francia.
grant
Obviamente eso
for
nunca
an
pasó.
intervention in France,
Pero bueno, tenemos
which
que seguir
never
trabajando en
happened,
el
of course,
proyecto.
but we continue
Bueno,
working
y me
on the
puse a
project.
pensar que
And,
o sea, era un proyecto en el territorio, un
and I
proyecto
thought
sumamente territorial.
that
Y
it was
esta
a
situación
very
me obligó a pensar qué son
localized
los territorios
project.
imaginados, que era algo que
And
yo
I
de
started
forma no
thinking
hubiera
about
imaginado
imaginary
o no hubiera
territories,
pensado en imaginar qué son los
which is
territorios
something that I
imaginados,
would
¿no?
have never
Y a mí me
given
pareció
any
muy
thought
rico y lo que
if
empecé
not
a
for
hacer
this
es
circumstance.
abordar territorios
So I
imaginados.
started thinking
¿Cómo
about
imagino un territorio al que no
imaginary
fui y no sé
territories.
cuándo voy a
What
ir,
do
no
I,
sé si voy a ir?
what
Y
is
no, en este
my
momento
notion about
ya
a
ni me
territory
interesa
that I don't
cuándo
know,
voy a ir. Pero
I've
bueno,
never been to, I don't
y
even
lo
know
ato con
if I
esto
am going to
de
go,
Gaby que dice del
but I
tejer.
don't
Bueno, en su caso es
care.
como bordar, ¿no?
I'm
Como
thinking about
generar mis propias
weaving
tramas
or
de lo que yo pienso que es un
embroidering,
territorio
I
que
would
no sé qué va a
say,
pasar, ¿no? Pero
embroidering
bueno,
my
mientras tanto quiero
own
seguir imaginando
pattern
eso,
in a
¿no?
territory that I
Bueno,
don't know,
nada,
because I want to
un
continue
cabo suelto que me
imagining.
había quedado ahí
It's just something
escuchándola.
that I was thinking about when I heard your contributions. Yes, those loose ends are the best to continue weaving, probably. Yang Yun or Mark and Lee, do you want to contribute anything else?
I think one of the things that I was picking out about and thinking about when you talked about what we gain of the times, one of the things I noticed, I think, in conversations today, at least in Singapore, because we have to be wearing masks, so all the expression is now located in the eyes, and it's the theme of BIM, which is to look you in the eye. When you're trying to get cues and feelings and emotions only by this space. And in order to express yourself with the screen being so small, we had to use our hands and move and use the body in a very different way in a day-to-day conversation, that just because we need to compensate for the inability to see. And I think that, with these movements and maybe perhaps new anxieties that come from using the body in a way that we're not used to, I think also of Mariella's idea of healing, of repetitive motion and healing, that given that we're constantly on Zoom or we're meeting with masks or we're distance, that it would create new movements and new habits that could be quite fascinating, just in the idea of how communication is going to work and as we move along, with all the limitations that we face. But perhaps there's also a new tapestry for how communication will exist, and how that might work with different people around the world. Because now we get to do this conversation, which we otherwise may not have if we are unable to fly, even in a normal, even in any circumstance. So I think it's also fascinating how body behaviors, our perception, the modes of expression, and also, as Gabriella mentioned, marking a kind of history so that there's a conversation that can happen after. because we're all in this shared kind of pandemic situation. So there is this interesting new form of communication that's, I feel like it's growing quite strongly in this period. Yeah.
Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Mark and Lee, would you like to contribute some more?
Yeah, yes, we definitely agree with what Yan Yun said, which is I think something that we can all feel out of this current time in history also is kind of this new level of commonality between everyone, having gone through this global experience together, I think. And definitely it's been isolating, but in being isolating is also something that can bridge all of us as well. And this is actually something that we were thinking about with one of our recent film projects, which we shot entirely at home during the lockdown period. It's a black and white short film. Yeah, so I think some of these opportunities to reflect on the experience of being at home, being under lockdown, that's something that has grown out of this time, and something that we are very keen to explore.
But also maybe with the idea of repeated patterns and repetition. Again, we're wondering also if previously we had thought with film, since I think many people have a favorite film, and then even with parties of differing views, it might be surprising to find that we might share certain same favorite film in our libraries, and so I wonder if with this year, with the new not new, but the repetition of everyone's anxieties and complaints and hopes to whether those overlaps might also kind of create some possible ways of be it collaboration or a mutual understanding, that then perhaps might translate further into that physical being together.
Yeah, and I think like Claudia was saying just now. So, when you're saying that when you perform, and then you can't hear the audience, but you mean that you are performing to a larger group of people that are still watching you. So I think there's something that we've also reflected on in that a lot of the places that we have been screening our films have gone online, and they've been using these newly formed platforms where where people rather than kind of asking a question during a dialogue session or Q&A session, they are typing in their comments, or they are chatting, contributing in the chat room to kind of dialogue with the filmmakers. Yeah, so definitely there's this idea of more I guess easier. It's a easier access to some of these things that normally might have been out of our reach. Like for example, Locarno Film Festival was online this year, and we caught so many films from there that we wouldn't have been able to in Singapore.
Right.
Yeah, so that's something that we are seeing as new possibilities. Of course, also there's limitations. Yeah, of course there's differences, there's limitations, and there's some worrying things for us as filmmakers as well. But I think we are very happy also about new possibilities of things becoming a bit.
Because anyway, I guess there would have been a different fluctuating thing. There would have been a different variable.
Exactly. Yeah, change is always in motion. So I think it's still very much possibilities that we can see.
Kind of, nice to kind of then have that opening up of that conversation or that new meeting, even though differently, but then I wonder like in that way that
Yeah.
it has come about.
Yes.
It's still quite fascinating.
Gracias.
Hopeful.
Gracias, muchas gracias. Hay un comentario.
Thank you. There's one comment
De parte de Tania, exacto, ahí está.
from
Bien.
Tania.
Hola a todos.
Do you want to introduce yourself briefly?
Bueno, primero que nada, como que
First of all,
quería agradecerles
I
la
would like
presentación que
to
hicieron
thank
el
you
día de hoy.
for your
Y también,
presentations today.
aludiendo a lo que
And
decía Claudia,
also
como
in connection
esta
with
cuestión en
what
la cual
Claudia
hace
was
falta la
saying, this
interacción, la respiración del
issue
otro,
where we
saber
need
que uno está siendo escuchado,
interaction
bueno,
and breathing and
sepan que son
knowing
muy
that you're
escuchados
being
y que
listened
sus
to.
producciones son muy
I
valiosas
want you
para todos
to
nosotros
know that
en
you
esta
are
época.
being listened to. We are
Y
listening
quería
very attentively,
justo
and your
como
productions are very valuable.
comentarles
And
en
I want,
referencia a la
my
imagen que
comment
mostró
was
Mariela, el
about the
caligrama.
image that
La
Mariela
semana
showed,
pasada
the
tuve la oportunidad
poem.
de estar en una charla con una artista
Last week,
mexicana
I
que se llama
was
Verónica
in
Gerber.
a talk
Y
with
ella
a Mexican
tomaba como
artist,
punto de partida
Verónica
justamente la
Gerber,
figura del caligrama,
and she
pero el caligrama
started
roto
with a
como
calligram,
un
with a
concepto
poem
creativo
that
que
is
nos
a
puede
graphic
ayudar a poder
presentation,
pensar en las
but a
producciones
broken
de
one,
esta época de la
so that
pandemia.
we think
Y un
about
caligrama
the
se
productions
definiría
at
como
this time.
esta
If
figura
you
en donde
define a
podemos ver
calligram as
imagen y
a
texto en
figure where we
simultáneo.
can have
Lo que nos sucede
image and
también en este
text at the
momento es
same
que
time,
en realidad
at
no
this
podemos ver la imagen
point,
y el texto en
what
simultáneo.
happens is that we
Para
cannot
poder
see
leer
image
se
and
tiene que
text.
hacer una especie de zoom in
In order
y
to
después
read,
para
you need
poder
to
ver la
zoom
imagen
in,
tienes que
and
tomar
then
algo
to
de
see the
distancia.
image, you need to
Entonces,
distance yourself
como a
from the
partir de todo
image.
lo que
So,
charlaron hoy y viendo
based
el
on
trabajo que
everything that you
presentaron
said
todos,
today
siento que
and
ahí hay una
looking at
confluencia
your
en
work,
el hecho en el cual
I see a
dentro de todos sus
confluence
trabajos están haciendo un
where
trabajo de
in your
surcido
work
para poder reparar ese caligrama,
you are
pero desde un
sewing
lugar de
the
cuidado
broken
y amor y
calligram
todo el tiempo
together
preguntándose, ¿no? Pienso
from
que estas
a
producciones en
space
medio de
of
la
care.
incertidumbre son en verdad
So
muy
these
valiosas
productions in the
en el
midst
sentido
of
también de la
uncertainty
valentía,
are really
de
valuable
poder
because they
atreverse
are
a seguir proponiendo
really brave in
o especulando como,
the
no
fact
sé,
that you are
argumentos, hipótesis
speculating or
futuros, pero futuros
proposing
en
future
términos de una construcción
hypotheses in terms
colectiva desde el
of
aquí y el
a
ahora.
collective
Así que, bueno,
construction
eso es como lo que quería
based
compartir
on the
y
here and now.
lo que pude
So
ver a partir
that's
de
what I
todo.
wanted to
Muchas
share
gracias.
because of what I saw in your presentations. Thank you, Tanya. That was a beautiful comment. And this image of the broken calligram, I think is great to think about those distances and those close-ups that we need to understand the present and to project into the future, to project our desire to the future. We have 5 more minutes, so we have time for one more comment or take these final minutes to say goodbye in a quiet and calm way. Yeah, before that, I want to invite our audience to the next activities. At 4, we have a performance that is the projection of collective images. At 4, then we have one of those sessions, and then there's a meeting with other artists similar to this one, with artists from Brazil and Argentina that have to do with the streets. So maybe it's a little late for you guys, but if you can join us for that activity or for any other of the BEAM activities. We want to thank everybody for participating in this table, for participation in looking at each other in the eye.
Tomo la palabra simplemente
So
para
I
decir
want
muchas
to
gracias
close
por esta
also
invitación.
thanking
Me dio
for the
mucho gusto
invitation.
encontrarla a Yang Yun
It was
porque
a
dialogamos de
pleasure
alguna
to
forma y como
see
ella
Yang
decía, a veces
Yung
no
because we were in
son
a
estas cosas,
dialogue,
¿no? Uno dialoga con
and
sonidos
it's kind
y
of
a mí me
strange
encantó
that
esta
you dialogue with
experiencia
sound
y bueno, y a
or
todos los
with
colegas, a Claudia,
our
no sé,
artistic
nos veremos en
experience,
algún
but
lugar, en algún
it's nice to put
momento,
a face to that.
seguramente,
And
pero
Claudia, also
al
a
resto
pleasure to see you
de los
guys,
compañeros
you,
con que
Claudia, and
estamos compartiendo
everybody
la mesa,
in this beautiful
me
round
encantaría
table.
que hubiera
I would
un
love
cara a cara
to
en
have a
algún momento, un
face-to-face at some
BIM
point,
donde
a
nos
beam
sigamos
where
mirando a
we
los
can
ojos, pero
look at
más
each other
cerca,
in the
tomando una
eye, but
cerveza y
closer and
disfrutando, que era
face-to-face
también
and with a
algo
beer.
que
And
extrañamos de la BIM este año, ¿no? Porque
there's
las
something
ediciones pasadas,
that we
además de todo lo que
miss
pasaba
from
como
the
programación,
previous
había muchas
BIMs,
instancias
because
de
apart from the
generar
sessions,
vínculos
we had
humanos, cerveza por
networking
medio
options
y
and
contándonos un montón de
spaces
cosas.
to
Así
go
que,
out
bueno,
and have a
seguramente
beer
la
and have a
próxima BIM
dialogue
estará esa
and talk
oportunidad y
person to
ojalá puedan
person.
estar
So I hope
acá
we
en
do
Buenos
have that
Aires y
opportunity,
Claudia también, por supuesto,
and I hope you
y seguir
can
conociéndonos.
come
Eso,
to
y
Buenos
muchas
Aires
gracias.
for the next BIM. Thank you.
And thank you so much for having us as well. And we'd love to be able to travel there and see you all in person one day, and for you to come down to Singapore as well. So it
Thank you
goes
so
both
much.
ways. Thank you so much.
We really
Yes, and I will do both. I will come to Argentina again, and I will also come back to Singapore. I sent you.
Yo voy a ser como Claudia, creo.
Yeah, I will do the same as Claudia.
Yeah.
I think they are putting together a tour. It goes from Buenos Aires to Italy, Germany, and Singapore.
Claro que sí.
Of course, yeah.
I sent you a sequence in the chat from my last performance with a wonderful gesture and the idea, let the pandemic come and let it go. It's just say thank you.
Bien, muchas gracias.
Thank you so much. I think Mark wants to say goodbye, to give us a few final words.
Yes, just want to say we really enjoyed being in conversation with everybody.
Yeah, getting to be here. Very, very grateful getting to be part of this year's BIM. And, you know, because our friend Jeremy Fernando also kind of introduced us to this whole thing. And yeah, we were so excited, like right from the beginning to the developments and finally also having that platform. Like, it was so
and
amazing.
seeing the whole platform come to life has really been an inspiration to us as well, and then uplifted kind of our spirits also, you know, to keep making more works as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bueno, un gran saludo a Jeremy.
Okay, thank you. I want to say hello to Jeremy, now that you mentioned him. Thank you for introducing Mark and Lee. And now I want to say goodbye. To close this, I want to thank everybody for your generosity and the time to share your experiences. And as Gabriela said, we want to invite you to continue, and if you can, come on board for the other activities of the BIM, which will continue until Sunday. We have this whole week ahead of us, and you can participate in other roundtables, and there are several activities, performances, and look at each other in the eye and go back through this platform. Thank you, everybody. A huge hug, and hope to see you in the tour.
And thank you to the translator as well. Thank you so much.
Muchísimas gracias a todas. Y abrazos.
Gracias.